The day Grandpa's will was read started with my mother asking if I planned to wear something that didn't look like it had survived a tornado. I should have known that was a warning. The entire family gathered in the fancy lawyer's office, all dressed like they were attending an awards ceremony instead of a funeral. My older brother sat there practically vibrating with excitement. My sister had already started browsing vacation homes on her phone. My parents looked like two investors waiting for a quarterly earnings report. Grandpa had been successful his entire life, though nobody seemed to know exactly how successful. He owned land, businesses, investments, and apparently enough secrets to keep conspiracy theorists employed for decades. The lawyer began reading. My brother inherited a luxury lakeside house. My sister received a massive stock portfolio. My parents inherited several rental properties, cash accounts, and enough investments to guarantee they would spend the rest of their lives reminding everyone how smart they were. Then came my turn. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. I hereby leave my grandson the property known as Green Valley Farm, including all structures, livestock, equipment, and associated acreage. Silence. A few seconds passed. Then my brother laughed. My sister laughed. My mother laughed. Even the lawyer looked like he was trying very hard not to smile. A goat farm? My father asked. The lawyer nodded. A goat farm. The room exploded. My brother nearly fell out of his chair. My sister wiped tears from her eyes. My mother actually had to hold the table for support. Oh, this is incredible, my brother said. Grandpa left you the goat kingdom. My father grinned. Well, at least you'll never run out of milk. Or lawnmowers, my sister added. For the next 20 minutes, every family member contributed a joke. Apparently goats were comedy gold. I forced myself to smile, but the truth was it stung. Grandpa and I had always been close. While everyone else focused on money, he spent time teaching me things. He taught me how to fix broken equipment, negotiate with difficult people, and solve problems without panicking. One memory kept replaying in my head. A few years earlier, we had been sitting on his porch watching the sunset when he said, "Most people only see value when someone tells them it's valuable." I hadn't understood what he meant. Now I wondered if he had simply gone senile. After the meeting, my family went to celebrate their inheritances at an expensive restaurant. Nobody invited me. Instead, I drove 3 hours into the countryside to see my glorious kingdom. The place looked like a disaster movie had been filmed there. The farmhouse leaned slightly to one side. The fences were broken. The barns looked ancient. Tall weeds covered everything. I climbed out of my truck and stared at the property. This is what I got, I muttered. A goat appeared from nowhere. Before I could react, it lowered its head and charged. The impact hit me square in the stomach. I flew backward into a muddy puddle that was probably older than I was. The goat stared at me for a moment, looking completely satisfied with itself. As I sat there covered in mud while my new enemy chewed grass nearby, I couldn't help wondering the same thing everyone else was wondering. Why in the world had Grandpa left me this disaster? For the next several weeks, I seriously considered selling the farm. Every morning I woke up to broken fences, stubborn goats, and enough repair work to keep a construction crew busy for a decade. The same goat that had tackled me on my first day seemed to have appointed itself my personal enemy. If I carried tools, it attacked. If I carried feed, it attacked. Once it attacked me while I was standing completely still. I named him Bankruptcy. It seemed appropriate. Despite the farm's condition, something kept bothering me. Grandpa had never done anything without a reason. The more I thought about it, the less sense the inheritance made. One afternoon I was repairing loose floorboards inside the farmhouse when I discovered a metal latch hidden beneath an old rug. Curiosity won. I pulled the latch. A section of the floor slid open. I nearly fell into a staircase. What kind of farmer has a secret basement? I muttered. Apparently my grandfather. The room below looked less like a farm storage area and more like the headquarters of a corporation. Shelves lined the walls. Filing cabinets filled the corners. Computer servers quietly hummed in climate-controlled cabinets. For several hours I sorted through documents. The deeper I dug, the stranger things became. Patents. Hundreds of them. Agricultural drones. Water conservation systems. Climate-resistant crop technology. Automated harvesting equipment. Advanced soil management systems. Grandpa's name appeared everywhere. At first I assumed it was some bizarre hobby project. Then 3 black luxury vehicles arrived at the farm the next morning. Men in expensive suits stepped out. I immediately assumed they were lost. Sorry, I told them. The bankruptcy auction isn't for another few years. None of them laughed. One handed me a business card. Another handed me a stack of legal documents. By the end of the meeting, I learned something that nearly caused me to fall out of my chair. The patents were real. Very real. Companies around the world licensed Grandpa's technologies. The royalties generated enormous amounts of money every month. And now I owned them. I spent the next hour convinced someone was running an elaborate prank. Then I checked the bank account attached to the business. The numbers contained more commas than I had ever seen in my life. I stared at the screen. Refreshed it. Stared again. Then refreshed it 3 more times. The money stubbornly refused to disappear. Things became even stranger a few days later. A sleek silver shuttle descended onto a landing pad that definitely had not existed the week before. Apparently Grandpa had owned that too. The passenger who stepped out was unlike anyone I had ever met. She was tall, graceful, and carried herself with effortless confidence. Her features were unmistakably alien, yet somehow elegant. She looked around the property with professional interest while I stood there holding a bucket and wearing boots covered in goat mud. She smiled politely. "Are you the new owner?" I assumed she was trying to sell something. "No thanks," I said. "I already have more goats than I can emotionally handle." She blinked. "I'm not selling goats." "Feed supplements?" "No." "Solar panels?" "No." Her smile widened. "I'm an agricultural consultant." I felt my face heat up. "Right. That makes much more sense." Unfortunately, I immediately made things worse. Trying to recover, I accidentally dropped the bucket, stepped backward, and walked directly into a water trough. The splash was spectacular. For a moment she simply stared. Then she laughed. It was the first genuinely pleasant sound I'd heard on the farm in weeks. As she helped me back onto dry ground, she explained that she represented several interstellar agricultural corporations interested in renewing contracts with Grandpa's company. I thought she was exaggerating. Then she casually mentioned that Grandpa's technologies were used on farming colonies spread across multiple star systems. I just stared at her. Behind us, Bankruptcy the goat climbed onto the hood of a billionaire's luxury vehicle. And suddenly I realized my grandfather's worthless goat farm might be far more important than anyone had ever imagined. The next 3 months felt less like real life and more like a comedy show written by someone with a strange sense of humor. Every week brought another surprise. Royalty payments flowed into my accounts so quickly that I eventually stopped checking the balance. The numbers had become ridiculous. Entire corporations paid licensing fees to use Grandpa's technology. Agricultural companies from Earth and distant colony worlds competed for contracts. People who controlled fortunes larger than some countries now waited in line for meetings at my goat farm. Meanwhile, bankruptcy was still stealing my tools. Some things never changed. The farm itself transformed rapidly. Broken fences disappeared. New barns rose from the ground. Research facilities were built. Advanced equipment arrived daily. Autonomous farming drones moved across the fields while engineers and specialists worked around the clock. Despite all that, I still preferred spending my mornings with the animals. The alien consultants spent more time at the property as well. At first our meetings were strictly business. Then they became lunches. Then evening walks. Then long conversations that had absolutely nothing to do with farming. She told me stories about distant colony worlds and strange alien customs. I shared stories about growing up with a family that considered sarcasm a competitive sport. To my surprise, she found my life fascinating. To my even greater surprise, I found excuses to spend more time with her. Unfortunately, the universe seemed determined to sabotage every potentially romantic moment. One evening we were walking through a newly restored orchard while watching the sunset. The conversation had become unusually comfortable. For several seconds neither of us spoke. I was finally building enough courage to compliment her. Then bankruptcy sprinted out of nowhere and rammed directly into my side. I fell into a bush. She laughed so hard she nearly couldn't stand. The goat looked extremely pleased with himself. A week later, I attempted another romantic moment during dinner. Bankruptcy somehow got inside the dining area and ate half my meal. I began suspecting the animal was operating under instructions from a higher power. While my personal life became increasingly complicated, my family remained completely oblivious. That changed when they started noticing signs of my success. The first warning came when my mother spotted several luxury vehicles parked outside the farm. The second came when my brother saw construction crews expanding the property. The third came when a news article mentioned Grandpa's company. Naturally, they reached the most ridiculous conclusion possible. They staged an intervention. I arrived at the farmhouse one afternoon to discover my entire family waiting for me. My mother looked concerned. My father looked serious. My brother looked excited. "We're here because we care about you," my mother announced. Those words immediately terrified me. My father folded his arms. "Son, are you involved in some kind of scam?" "A scam?" My brother nodded confidently. "We've done research." That statement worried me even more. My sister produced several printed articles. "We think you've joined either a pyramid scheme, a cult, or an alien romance fraud operation." I stared at them. For several seconds I genuinely couldn't speak. The irony was almost painful. I was sitting on top of one of the largest agricultural empires in existence, and my family thought I had been tricked by attractive aliens. The consultant happened to walk into the room at that exact moment. She politely greeted everyone. My brother immediately whispered, "See? Alien romance scam." I nearly choked trying not to laugh. The following weeks only increased the chaos. Major corporations announced partnerships with Grandpa's company. International media outlets began covering the story. Agricultural conferences requested interviews. Business magazines wanted profiles. Eventually, one invitation stood above all the others. A nationally televised program requested an exclusive interview. The producers wanted the public introduction of the mysterious heir who had inherited Grandpa's hidden empire. As I stared at the invitation, I couldn't help smiling. For months my family had laughed at the goat farm. Now the entire world was about to learn what Grandpa had really left behind. The television studio was far less intimidating than I expected. The host greeted me warmly, the audience applauded, and cameras pointed in my direction from every angle. What surprised me most was how many people seemed genuinely interested in hearing about a goat farm. Then again, it wasn't really a goat farm anymore. Not just a goat farm. The interview started simply enough. Questions about Grandpa. Questions about the inheritance. Questions about how I discovered the hidden business. As the conversation continued, the scale of Grandpa's accomplishments slowly unfolded. The audience learned about the agricultural patents, the licensing agreements, the interplanetary farming networks, the technologies being used on colony worlds across multiple star systems, the royalties, the partnerships, the billions of people whose food production depended on systems Grandpa had quietly developed over decades. The studio audience became increasingly silent, then increasingly amazed. By the time the host revealed the estimated value of the company, several people openly gasped. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, my family was watching from their living room. Later, my brother admitted he nearly dropped his drink. My father dropped an entire coffee mug. My mother spent 10 minutes insisting the interview had to be fake. Unfortunately for them, every major news network was reporting the exact same story. The truth was unavoidable. The abandoned goat farm they had mocked for months controlled assets worth far more than everything they had inherited combined. The host smiled at me. So when people called your inheritance a joke, how did that feel? I couldn't help laughing. Honestly? The goat that attacked me on day one was more supportive than some members of my family. The audience erupted with laughter. The interview became one of the most viewed broadcasts of the year. By the time I returned home, reporters, investors, and business leaders were waiting near the property entrance. Fortunately, the celebration that followed felt much more comfortable. Employees, researchers, local townspeople, and business partners gathered at the farm to celebrate Grandpa's legacy. As the evening continued, a large screen was activated near the main barn. A previously unreleased recording appeared. Grandpa's face filled the display. The crowd immediately grew quiet. "If you're watching this," Grandpa said with a grin, "then my plan worked." That sounded exactly like him. He explained that he had deliberately hidden the true value of the company. Too many people chased obvious wealth. Too many people judged value by appearances. He wanted the empire inherited by someone willing to work for understanding instead of instant rewards. Then he looked directly into the camera. "Wealth belongs to builders, not braggers. Never forget that." For a moment nobody spoke. Then the crowd applauded. I felt a lump form in my throat. Even after all these years, Grandpa had managed to teach one final lesson. As the celebration continued, the alien consultant joined me near the edge of the property. The newly restored fields stretched toward the horizon. Advanced farming systems worked alongside traditional methods. Everything Grandpa had built was finally visible. She smiled. "You know, I originally came here because of your grandfather." "That makes sense." She laughed softly. "But I stayed because of you." For once, I managed not to embarrass myself. "Good," I said. "Because I was hoping you'd agree to an actual date." "I'd love to." The answer came so quickly that I wondered why I had been nervous. We started walking through the fields together, as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon. For a few peaceful minutes everything was perfect. Then bankruptcy appeared. The goat charged directly between us, stole a bag of celebration snacks from a nearby table, and sprinted away into the darkness. We both burst out laughing. Some things truly never changed. As I watched the ridiculous animal disappear into the distance, I thought about everything that had happened. My family had seen broken fences, old barns, and a worthless inheritance. Grandpa had seen opportunity. He had seen potential hidden beneath appearances. Maybe that was humanity's greatest strength. Not intelligence. Not wealth. Not technology. The ability to look at something everyone else dismisses and imagine what it could become. The world had looked at an abandoned goat farm. Grandpa had looked at it and seen an empire. And somehow, against all odds, he had been right.